Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds. It doesn't, honestly, now that I think about it, it doesn't seem like it would make a very good coffee flavor.
No, not great.
So what are you going to do? You're going to take your delicious French toast and dip it in a cup of coffee? No, why would you do that? Yeah. You're an absurd person if you do that.
Yeah, fuck you.
Mm-hmm. You're a real piece of shit if that's how you eat your French toast, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Oh, man. My name is Tom Ryman, and this is my associate, Panthro Jackson.
Hi.
And we just watched Psych! Season 3, Episode 15, titled Tuesday the 17th.
Let's do it. I'm what's the word for excited?
All right, what's the rub here, Cunningham? I know you didn't track us down after 20 years to tell us that Friday the 13th is your new life plan.
Hey, look, I read the paper. All right, you guys uncovered a dinosaur and rescued a mummy in the same calendar year. I need your help. As detectives and as old friends, we're sort of missing a counselor.
Oh, what is that? What does that even mean? Sort of missing.
You're vibrating with anticipation.
We got a little bit of what's it called? Maintenance at the top of this.
If you want to call
thanks
it that.
to Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't. Noah, our Patreon producer, who made this all happen, folks. This is like a special mini series of We Just Watched is what you're listening to right now.
We're gonna have to just lay the wet turd of disappointment on you straight out of the gate. We're not watching the entirety of Psych.
No, we're really not.
at least not right now.
Yeah, when we tweeted about it, we got some people who were very excited. People who were very nervous about what we're gonna think of this show. A lot of Psych fans out there.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, this.
I mean, because Psych is a show that was on for like 8 seasons, but I don't really hear people talking about it.
No, it didn't seem like it made a big like cultural impact. But I think this is one of those shows that is what I would compare it best to. Oh, well, let me finish this thought. We're doing 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little mini series. It's a We Just Watched special. It'll come out Saturdays sporadically because we have some other Saturday podcasts to take care of at the same time. So thank you to Noah. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
What I was going to say is I put this sort of in the slot of a show like House, a show I really enjoyed, where this started in around like late 2000s, and it feels very much that of its time.
Yeah, this is like I want to say like mid, but so's House.
I would also put this in the slot of like Scrubs, where it's, again, of its time, doesn't necessarily hold up for everybody, but like holds a really fond place in people's hearts, is my assumption, the way House is for me. Mm-hmm. Like I've watched House like twice, and it's just a real easy watch.
And House does all the thinking for you, man. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah,
I
imagine this is the same.
Sit back, you just put the recliner in, and you're like, Dr. House, you do the work for me, man.
Exactly.
Figure me away, it out. Dr. House.
Diagnose Jeremy Renner. He's in an episode of House.
So is Dave Matthews.
Yeah, they all are. All of them are. All the people.
Anyway, that's Housecast.
Yep. Save it for Housecast.
Yeah.
No, and so that's my assumption is that I think this is a comfort watch for a lot of people.
Yeah, probably. I could see that. This is a show that I have never seen before.
Same.
But that said, I've watched a little bit more of it than you, Dave, I think, unless you've watched more since the last time we talked.
No, I've only watched this episode.
Okay, so I watched like a handful, most of the first season. Also, I think the majority of the first season I've watched just to get a feel for the show so that one of us kind of knew going into it.
I mean,
but basically we're both pretty, we're like psych virgins. You're taking our psych virginity with this show.
Yeah, if you want to say
if
it
that's
like
what
that.
you want to call it.
Yeah, I never gave this show a thought. I think we've been asked multiple times to cover this show. I was surprised it's 40 minutes long. That was the first surprise, that this is a hour-long show.
It's an hour-long program.
Yeah. But I just generally not thought about it. So there's a combination of like coming into this, there's stuff that feels like I have critiques of this episode, and I don't know what's an honest, like a real critique, and what is simply the fact that I'm walking in the middle of a show. And I guess I apologize to people listening. Like, if you're a big Psych fan, I don't know how much use I will be to you. My perspective is of someone who's never seen a show jumping in on the third season.
Yeah, just a completely random episode. Well, not totally random. There is a structure to this.
We should probably discuss that, is that the 4 episodes that we'll be covering are all movie parodies.
Yeah, they're all like direct spoofs of a specific movie.
And if you can't tell, Tuesday the 17th is a spoof episode of Friday the 13th.
It sure is, Dave. It sure is.
We can go into the plot a little bit.
Yeah, so this episode is about Sean and Gus, who, if you've not seen the show, okay, straight up top, you'll be in the same boat as us if you've never seen the show. The show is about a detective named Sean who is like Sherlock Holmes. He's like a Dr. House type, essentially, in terms of he's just a character who is impossibly good at deductive reasoning and has a photographic memory. But through convoluted circumstances that only happen on television, he has to lie to the police and tell them that he's psychic to explain how he knows the answer to a specific case to avoid getting arrested for it, because they think the only reason he could know so much about it is because he was involved. So that's like the premise of the show is now he just has this gig as a quote unquote psychic detective when it's really he's just very observant. But he has to keep this grift going with his partner Gus. And this specific episode is they are contacted by a childhood friend to come investigate a missing camp counselor at the summer camp that this friend has just purchased. And it turns out to be just a real Friday the 13th shindig that at first turns out to be fake. The friend is changing the camp to make it kind of like an escape room, haunted house camp for adults. But then a real murderer shows up. It's Foggy Nelson from Daredevil. It's one of the Bash brothers from the Mighty Ducks. So a real murderer shows up that they have to deal with. What's interesting about this episode, and what I'll say right up top for the benefit of people like Panthro here, who have never seen the show before, this is a very much an atypical episode, not just because it's a movie spoof, but because it doesn't really follow the format of the series. It's like kind of breaks format with this episode, which makes it like doubly weird for this to be the first one that Dave's ever seen.
Yeah. There's also a B story in this that involves a character who I have no idea anything about. Getting back together with his wife, who I have no idea what that's about. So I mean, I'm not like the thing that I'm particularly lost about.
Yeah,
is actually tonal more than anything else. The characters felt very inconsistent to me. That's what I'll say, and I don't know I don't know how much of that is a fault in the writing, how much of that is just jumping into an episode. The main character, for example, he will be cowardly in some scenes and brave in others. Mm-hmm. A lot of characters are very like clownish, but then will be very sharp in other scenes. The main guy in the B plot, what's that character's name?
Lassiter. He's like a Michael Scott type in some scenes, like really over the top. Mm-hmm.
And then he'll become really serious in other scenes. That's why it reminded me of something like Scrubs, where like when you get into a series, like I always imagine when you watch, like, you know how it is, the first season of a series, the characters are all relatively grounded. The first season, especially of comedies, is like you're getting to know these people.
Mm-hmm. And so are the
and then
writers
everything becomes
and the actors. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything slowly becomes like almost like a cartoon or parody of itself over time. I think there becomes meta jokes. They get looser with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You've sort of earned a lot of goodwill with the characters.
Yeah.
So like without that, it just seemed very inconsistent.
I think that's pretty. I'll say, having watched most of the first season in addition to this episode, that seems to be kind of the tone of the show. It's more. It airs more heavily on the side of clownishness, but there will be moments where a character is suddenly very sharp, or a character needs to be serious for a moment, or actually say something that's heartfelt and meaningful.
Right.
Which is kind of standard sitcom shit.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is issues that has to do with the era. Like, they very rarely are, in this episode at least, are women given a role that's silly. It's mostly the main woman character, the cop, is just there to be a buzzkill. You know, and that's, again, of its era.
Kinda.
Like, faults of the...
She's more, I will say she's more playful and she enjoys Sean's antics. It's really Lassiter who is usually the buzzkill.
Really?
Yeah, he is usually extremely serious to the point of he has no self-awareness.
What are these people's relation? Because they aren't seen together in this episode.
So Sean and Gus work unofficially for the police department sometimes. They're not in this episode. They get hired by their old friend Jason. But they will also frequently work with the police to help solve cases. And Lassiter is like the head detective in, I think, Santa Barbara is where it takes place.
Right.
And he super doesn't like Sean because he knows he's a grifter. He just can't figure it out.
Yeah.
The lady cop whose name is Jules, she, I think, believes that Sean is psychic, but she also just enjoys him, like she enjoys his antics.
Right.
But also has to put on the dad hat and be like, well, I'm the authority figure here and you're being ridiculous right now. So
she is actually the least responsible character in this episode.
Yes.
Because he calls her immediately when he thinks that something is...
Right. As soon as the first fake murder happens, he's like, that's a big thing that's uncharacteristic for Sean in this episode is Sean is almost the straight man in this episode, and that's like never the case. It's because this episode starts with a flashback to when he was a kid, which happens in a lot of episodes I've seen, where his dad, Corbin Burnson, will give him some sort of weird advice. And anyway, he has bad memories about this camp specifically, and about going there with Gus when they were kids, because Gus ditched him for this other friend, Jason, to win a piñata contest, and he hasn't really gotten over it, so he doesn't want to be there in the first place. And then freaky murder stuff starts happening, and he's super not into it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because he struck me as being relatively responsible. He calls her almost immediately, and then she doesn't call any backup.
Nope.
In fact, everybody around him is wildly irresponsible.
Well, that's because at first, most everyone is in on the game.
Right. Except
for the one counselor that Gus is trying to act cool in front of. He tells her his name is Slicks.
Yeah. I have questions about Gus's character as well.
Gus.
Because he's another one where I couldn't tell when he was being sincere or not, because I don't have any point of reference. So like at one point he talks about how tea is a great stress reducer, and I couldn't tell if he was being ironic, if he was like Data, if he's like the straight man, or if he's being like, it's very jumping in, understanding the characters in something like this, because it's so screwball.
Yeah,
it's so tonally inconsistent with its jokes, where you can't tell, like, it's cartoony.
Yeah,
in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of it's weird because I've never I don't know. Like, I feel like shows like this are designed so that you're supposed to be able to jump in at any time, right?
Yes, as long as
generally speaking,
yeah. This is a weird one to pick because it completely breaks the format. It's like not in the format of the rest of the other episodes.
It's also going back to like shows like Scrubs. Like, it's in this weird in between where it's not quite a show you can just jump into, I don't think. I think that it's not like Family Guy, you know? It's not a show that's just like designed to run 20 seasons and just be unending, and the characters, I assume, progress and change in this show too.
I don't know. We'll see.
It feels serialized, but it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they're normally, I will say that Sean and Gus are normally in opposite roles. Gus is usually, he's the one that has a real job. Like, he has a day job as I think a pharmaceutical sales rep. He's usually kind of fastidious. He kind of objects to a lot of the really over-the-top clownish stuff that Sean does. But in this episode, he's kind of teaming up with an old friend of theirs that he used to prank Sean with. So it's like he's in a prankster role in this episode that he usually doesn't occupy, at least not in this episodes that I've seen.
So much of this podcast is
me explaining
I hope
the show to you.
Y'all ready to hear a man have a show explained to him.
Yeah.
But hopefully by the 4th episode, I'll have a grip on it.
Yeah.
Just going into like the little parts of the show, like is like, again, these are. I should, by the way, say for the most part, I enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, it's funny. He makes a Rick Astley pinata, throws it in the lake.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
There's a lot of weird references to strange things.
Well, that's what I was curious about too, because there was some that felt. There's one of the weirdest exchanges I've seen in comedy in a while, and I really couldn't figure it out. Were they all weirdly hostile to Foggy when they met him? Have they met him before?
No.
Because like there's a weird hostility to him, right? Or like I don't figure
know.
that out.
I don't know. I didn't necessarily detect it. They do sort of are like, oh, you're the funny guy, huh? Like they are kind of immediately like, fuck you to that guy.
I wrote down the line that led up to it, and I'm still not sure what the fuck it means. He asks where Jason is, who's the guy who he rolls up on the camp, and he's like, where's Jason? And Foggy, I'm just gonna call him Foggy.
That is fine.
He says he's inside trying to figure out what's eating Gilbert Grape. Turns out it was a flesh-eating virus. And then he goes, oh, I get it. You're the funny guy, in a really like aggressive way. And I was like, I don't know what just happened. What the hell is the Gilbert Grape reference?
I can't decipher any of that.
Yeah. And I couldn't, like, this feels like a very, a show that's prides itself on how many deep cuts it can make, right? They have a Vibes reference, a movie that I had happened to have just watched. He says, couldn't you do any better than Vibes? Or she says that. Because says I got some weird vibes, and he says Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper couldn't. For people who don't know what that means, there is a movie called Vibes that you're all Googling, starring Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper. Mm-hmm. Tom, have you seen this movie?
No, I think I've walked past this VHS before, but I've definitely never seen it.
I was just looking for movies the other night, and I just stumbled into Vibes and was like, wait,
what
is this? Is this like...
What a fucking wink from the knowing eye of destiny. Like, how do you accidentally just stumble upon Vibes?
I don't know. Quick review of Vibes. Not great. It's about Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper playing psychics who are like hired to hunt a treasure, and I believe they fall in love. I blacked out for most of the movie because it was so slow.
Wouldn't they fall in love, Dave?
Yeah. The most interesting thing about it is that they both claim to be psychics, and as far as you can tell, they are. Like, they don't, I don't know, but they never show their abilities from their perspective, so they just seem really unhinged throughout the movie.
I also... I imagine an additional element must be that I think Cyndi Lauper is quite literally exactly half of the size of Jeff Goldblum. So it must be like watching Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, absolutely. It's I wouldn't recommend watching this movie.
Well, now
I guess.
You know I'm going to watch it as soon as we're done taping now.
It's a real slow
Fuck, am I not going to watch a movie called Vibes about Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper being psychic detectives?
Psychics. I feel like there were other people and things in it, but oh yeah, Steve Buscemi's in it. So yeah,
shit, yeah.
It's a real, like, it's
I
one
feel
of
like
those
there's like
movies-
another psychic movie that I'm like a
I don't
psychic
know.
detective comedy from the 80s.
This movie's
God
from
damn it.
1988, and it's like,
I feel like there was a brief window where they tried to make this a genre.
yeah, this is during that Jeff Goldblum, the like Earth Girls Are Easy period,
Yeah,
where
there's
there's just
shit.
like movies that, where it's like I did not know he was in this. I remember the first time I watched Earth Girls Are Easy, I watched it on TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
that was like a eternal Comedy Central. Cut that was just forever in their holster.
I had not seen the credits, so the aliens come down, they're all furry, and then they do a reveal when she shaves them, and my head almost exploded because it's like
It's Jeff Goldblum, Damon Wayans, and Jim Carrey.
yeah, in order. It starts with Damon Wayans, I believe. Or maybe it's Jim Carrey, and it was just like, wait, what? Then it was the other one. It was like, wait, what? And then the final reveal, Jeff Goldblum walking out, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Am I dead?
Yeah.
Am I at Elysium? What just happened?
Yeah, exactly. Did I just suffer a head injury? That's the exact same thing with Vibes. It's
Fucking
like
Vibes.
someone took a bunch of names and like shook them up and threw them out onto the universe, and that's what we got. It is a shocking film to exist, and it's being referenced in this psych. I don't know why it's being referenced.
I don't know, man, because it's a movie about psychic detectives.
Yeah, well, I mean, technically his line, so going back, she says, couldn't you do any better than Vibes? He says Jeff Goldblum and Cyndi Lauper couldn't. That is not true. They do way better than Vibes. Both of those.
Not in the
people.
realm of psychic detection.
Sure.
That's about where that's the ceiling they both reached in that
Yeah,
particular
I guess
field.
that's true. I just mean in their careers in general, but you're right.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Did Cyndi Lauper, she had movies, right? She did it was like Madonna, how they...
Oh, yeah. So, Desperately Seeking Susan or some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of deep cuts. I also don't get the Gilbert Grape joke. I'm like, what?
I don't either.
Because when they show up, the idea is that Sean still thinks they're legit looking for a missing counselor. He doesn't know yet that he's being goofed upon. So even like if they're showing up under that pretense, like that line still doesn't make sense. Like, what do you mean he's inside? Like, is somebody pouting? I don't know.
And I feel like they cram a lot of references in. There's later, though, with the specific thing with Foggy, because later he introduces himself to the police lady, and he like hits on her, and she says, "Oh, I'm a cop," and she says it really shittily, and then he goes, "Oh, nice rejection," like really shitty back, and it was like nobody likes this guy, and he doesn't like anybody. Like it felt like there was a scene missing because there was like so much hostility towards him. As if they knew he was the killer already.
Right, they already knew he was the murderer.
Yeah.
I forget what his line is when he hits on her, but it is one of the lines that you would respond with, "Okay, go away."
He says something about himself. He says, "Hi, I'm so and so, and I like long walks." Kind of line, like
right. It's like I'm
giving you my dating.
Yeah, like I'm as funny as I am handsome, or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Man, there's okay. We're figuring it out. I don't know.
Well, this is just what we just watched, as far as I'm concerned.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
We're just going through, or at least I am. I'm going to be fairly all over the place because, I mean, we might have some regular things to discuss, right?
Well, since they're all every episode we've been instructed to watch is a spoof of a movie. I figure we could talk about some of the connections.
Yeah.
I mean, the obvious one is the friend that hires them is named Jason, which of course is a reference to Jason Voorhees. But his last name is also Cunningham, so his name is Jason Cunningham, and the director of the first Friday the 13th is Sean Cunningham.
Yeah.
There
They
you
mentioned
go.
Crystal Lakes in the opening song.
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised. The boat at the opening, it's not quite the same boat from the ending of Friday the 13th. They just had to get a different color.
Mm-hmm. It's close.
It's close. It's just not the right color.
Mm-mm.
They just needed to get the right color.
I will say they duplicate the hallway shower tracking shot from Friday the 13th Part 2 very, very closely.
Yeah, there's a lot of accuracy in the filmmaking, I thought. They make it look grainy. Similar, the title sequence is the same.
Yeah,
it's not.
It's the Friday the 13th Part 3, like in 3D. Comes out at the camera.
Yeah, it's not 1-to-1 because it's not trying to be, though.
No,
like the impression I got is that they tried to do it when they could,
when it made sense.
When it made sense, but you can't quite replicate things for the sake of. Some things that are more R-rated you can't do, like showing the murders, which they did in their favor in hiding the twist.
Mm-hmm.
It also made the twist impossible to solve because because it's editing. Like they show a series of murders, and the reveal is that he's not murdering these people; he's just pranking them.
Mm-hmm.
And if the scene lasted a little longer, you would see that. But it's not. This isn't like a big mystery show, or at least this episode doesn't seem like
it. Doesn't normally. They are. It is a mystery show, and you usually are able to solve it. This one is leaning on the slasher movie idea, and that it is cutting away right before the murders happen.
Right, but you could argue that it's sort of a meta thing because there is no way to solve it based on that because they're cheating.
It's using that idea that you're like, well, they're not going to show the murders because it's a TV show, and it's like, well, no, they're not going to show you the murders because nobody's getting murdered.
Exactly, and that's almost why they're cheating
a little bit,
is because you don't get to see any of the murders, so you can't tell, and you assume it's because it's TV. But like if it was a 1-to-1 parody of Friday the 13th, you'd see the murders. Absolutely, that's kind of the core of Friday the 13th that they can't recreate. Not because they chose not to, because they just can't.
Yeah, it's
because it's TV.
Physically not. Like the two people that do really get murdered, we don't actually. They make it clear that they've been murdered, but we don't actually see anything, and we see reaction shots of people finding the dead bodies, but we don't actually see the dead bodies.
Right.
What's another thing? Foggy's name in this episode is Clive, which I'm sure is a Clive Barker reference.
Huh.
And his backstory is pretty much like the plot of this episode is kind of loosely the same as the first Friday the 13th movie. Like basically Foggy's mad because his dad died at the camp in some weird accident, and it's just become like a ghost story that the campers recreate each summer for fun. And he's like,
right,
that's my dad, and this is a fun game for you, but he actually died. It's
a reverse on Pamela.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good take for it.
Of course, when we got their friend Jason, running around pretending to murder people, he is dressed exactly like Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th Part 2 with the big pillowcase on his head.
Naturally, yeah.
And the overalls. They even have the same old guy who's like, "You're doomed."
It's one of
on his bicycle.
It's one of the things that it's almost like a problem with parodying the early Friday the 13th is that to do it properly, it doesn't feel like Friday the 13th because people absolutely don't remember that Jason got his mask in the third movie.
That's one of the
three movies for the iconic mask to show up.
Yeah, that is true. And it's also one of the things that I really liked about the way that this episode handles the parody. Because if you're not super familiar with specifically the first two Friday the 13th movies, most of the references probably won't land.
Right. You'll probably be able to tell that the genre that they're doing a parody of, but it also probably made for some easy legal stuff, because I bet you that putting a sack over someone's head is fine, whereas giving them the Jason Voorhees mask is perhaps problematic legally.
Well, that's interesting because in the first scene of the episode, when it's a counselor getting fake murdered, she's watching what is supposed to be a Jason movie on TV, and it's clearly a dude in a hockey mask murdering people in the woods. But it's not a Jason movie. It's not an existing Friday the 13th film. It's something that they recreated for the show. I
mean, now that you say it, probably hockey masks, you also can just... put on somebody in a movie. I don't know how that works.
I think there's a certain design, like that red triangle that's in between, that's on the brow. I think it's probably like a mix of having that specific design on a character and calling him Jason, where you probably get in trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
But beyond that, it's just a hockey mask,
also,
man.
Parody has a specific rule that they follow. There was a I remember this because of film school. This is really early. Well, not early for this episode, but there was a book that did a I've never looked this book up. It sounds terrible. They did a recap of the O.J. Simpson trial in the style of Dr. Seuss, and they got sued.
God.
And they lost because they weren't parroting Dr. Seuss. It wasn't a parody of Dr. Seuss. It was in the style of. It was still a satire, I guess. I don't know. That's probably a real bummer to read, that book.
Yeah, it sounds. It's like
that's the difference. Is like if you have to. There's a fine line between making a parody of something and simply doing something in the style. I would say this counts as a parody for sure.
It's a mix of both, but definitely further towards parody.
Yeah,
because like you said,
it's interesting how that law works.
Oh yeah, for sure. God damn, that OJ book sounds awful. It sounds like that stupid.
I never looked it up. I never wanted to.
Krasenstein, is that right? It's like how they dumped Drumpf or whatever, that children's book.
Right. It's those things that exist and they are there to make a lot of money and then be forgotten, right? It's like it's not a coffee table book. It's like
it's the fucking the Situations autobiography. Like you got to put these out within a 4-month period, or else you're never going to sell any of them.
Right, and they know that.
They know it's an entire industry. Everybody knows this.
It's just wild to think that people buy it, I guess.
Yeah, people were really into OJ, man. That whole trial, that was a whole ass thing.
Oh, I get it. This is pre-reality TV. That's like it's just like Game of Thrones, you know?
Well, reality TV
just
existed.
Like, how is it going to end? Everybody wants to know.
Reality TV existed, but it was like Real World Road Rules, and they were still pretty nascent, like still pretty early
awful
in their runs. A couple more things I wanted to call out. Obviously, Sean is aware of the rules of slasher movies because he's like, no, we should all stay here in the laundry room. I don't know why you're all running out there and splitting up.
Right.
So there's a bit of scream in there. And then Gus, like later on, is also aware of it because he's like, no, I'm not. I'm the black guy. I'm not going outside. I've seen what happens.
Right.
Then there's a moment that I think might be an Are You Afraid of the Dark reference. It's when one of the characters literally says, what, are you afraid of the dark? And puts a candle down, and then it slowly zooms in on the flame. And isn't that how every Are You Afraid of the Dark started?
I think so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I believe so. A lot of references in this. It's very reference heavy.
Every episode is pretty reference heavy that I've seen.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
This more so than others because it's trying to evoke a specific genre.
Right.
And the last thing I'll call out this is like the weirdest one because it's not a movie, it's just like a thing. When they first arrive
is it Robert?
It's Robert the Doll, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Robert the Doll.
It's a reference to Adam Todd Brown, who has a Robert the Doll. Yeah.
He sure does.
There's a famous haunted doll in this. I'm sure it's not the haunted doll. It's a recreation. It was Robert the Doll, which was a companion for. I looked this up because I was like, I knew it. It was a child who had it and was sick and died, I believe.
They did an episode of, I think, Lore about it.
Yeah, and they said that it could move on its own, change expression. It's like, if you Google any list of like real haunted dolls, it's on there with like Annabelle and so on and so forth. Although Annabelle was
it's a Raggedy Ann.
Raggedy Ann, yeah.
Robert the Doll is just like this fucking creepy ass sailor doll. If you've seen it before, you know exactly what it looks like, and it's. I have to push back. I think a lot of people would agree with you. I don't think Robert the Doll's that creepy, to be honest. He's not. He looks it's the stuff that surrounds him, but it's also because he looks like a My Buddy, although he's completely felt. His head's not plastic like My Buddy is. But there's just something about an almost Uncanny Valley doll that it's roughly life size. Like he's about the size of a toddler.
I do want to amend it because I just Googled the picture and I hadn't noticed the size of Robert. And the size of Robert is unsettling. It's the kind of doll that like your kid would want to have, and then he would scare you every time you walked in a room.
Because it's like 2 feet tall.
Because he just looks like a dead kid.
Yeah, he looks like a stuffed child in a sailor suit.
Yeah, like most dolls, I feel like I could fight and win, Robert included. But I feel like Robert would be, again, big, and so more of a nuisance to fight.
Yeah, I'd fuck Robert up, but that it would haunt me. Like, it would stick with you.
It would be, it's like killing a really big spider.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, I really felt that. Whereas, like, Chucky is so small that it's like, I don't, this isn't a problem at all. But, like, Robert...
Yeah, you could kick Chucky really far.
Yeah.
That's the extent of, like, the overt references that I notice. Well, the very end is, like, a reference to the very end of... the first Friday the 13th, where they're all just looking out at the lake.
Right.
And it's a similar music cue.
Yeah. I mean, we're not always going to be able to catch the references, I don't think, depending on
what it is.
The movies that I mean,
there was a cornucopia in this episode.
I'm going to let people guess what other movie spoofs.
Oh yeah.
Forward.
Yeah.
I don't want to reveal that.
Cuz I'm sure they must have done several. This movie the show is very pop culture reference heavy.
Oh yeah. It's filled with it. Yeah, I mean, I have no other major notes. I was gonna do a shout out to Robert.
Robert the famous doll.
Robert the doll. Yeah. I mean, I kind of in terms of like what final thoughts on this show, I guess, is going to be really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like impressions. Like, what's your impression? Because I know you watched a bunch because of
I've probably seen
research.
I've probably seen about 8 or 9 episodes. Yeah.
So that implies that you've enjoyed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I stand by that. This show so far is pretty harmless. Like, I get why people like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's too dated now to pick up personally.
Like, that's interesting.
Again,
yeah, maybe.
I didn't have any trouble watching it. There wasn't jokes where I was like, "Ooh, that's bad." It's more just like there was no jokes that made me laugh either.
Oh,
like the humor felt dated. And again, this isn't really like I'm coming down on it in like a negative way. Just humor over time. It's like anything else. This is almost 10 years old, which really bummed me out.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, 2007. Oh, that was like a couple years ago.
Almost 10 years old?
Yeah.
Dave, that's 14 years old.
God damn it. Stop saying stuff like that. So, like, the same way, like, again, House, a show that I enjoy, is not a show that I would expect people to like, because that show is fucking corny. The jokes are bad. The jokes are worse than this. But this is of its time, is my point. Like Scrubs, it's a show of its time that I think there has to be. I think there's a lot of people who probably watched it when it came out and have more goodwill towards it than I do. Which isn't to say that I didn't like it. Like I said, it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It's that it didn't speak to me in any strong way, I would say. But I don't know. We got more episodes coming up, so who can say?
Yeah, that's true.
Who can say what the future holds?
I'm trying to figure if there's anything else I wanted to call out. There's a moment. There's probably gonna. We'll see how this fleshes out in other episodes. But there's a bit of an idea that when you watch the show, you kind of got to keep in mind that they're supposed to kind of be on the job.
Right. Not in this episode.
Not really, but like the premise of this episode is kind of wild in that the friend Jason teams up with Gus to fake hire Sean to solve a fake missing counselor to promote his camp. It's like, wow, that can't be a wise expenditure after you just bought this whole camp. Yeah,
I had notes on that, by the way. It also is why this is unsolvable. is that the motivation behind this fake thing doesn't make any sense. Like this guy has his friend come for I guess promo, like it's like a PR thing, but he's not press. No one's gonna write about it. It's just a prank.
Yeah,
he's playing on a friend.
They're
and then
just
once
playing a prank on Sean.
Once the cop gets involved, he should shut it down. Instead, he puts himself at gunpoint.
Because he almost gets shot by the cop.
Like Sean is, again, the most responsible character in this whole thing. He's the only one who's like, I should call the cops. When he realizes what's happening, he's like, everybody stop, don't shoot. He's trying really hard to keep shit together. Mm-hmm. Whereas this camp idea, him doing these test runs,
it's
they're not
deranged.
For anybody's benefit.
No, it's a deranged thing to do.
Right.
Because we later learned that he didn't even tell all the counselors. Like he would like surprise them and pretend to be a murderer and then pull off the mask and be like, no, it's okay, it's just me. This is what the camp's really gonna be. It's like, I feel like you have to tell people that when you hire them.
Right. And so it's madness. This, by the way, great idea for a camp. Yeah. Terrible execution.
I think these camps might exist.
Probably, yeah.
Not for like a full week or anything, but
they might not have existed in 2007, but like they definitely are a thing. Like escape rooms are a thing, you know.
Yeah, escape rooms and like super intense haunted houses that they make you like sign waivers for and shit.
Yeah, I assume camps like this. I've been to one adult summer camp, which is probably one more than most people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't pay to go. I guess no judgments on people who do go, but my point was
But you really wanted to make that clear before you went any further. I took notice of that, Dave.
Sure did. I was invited.
It was for work?
It was for work. It was fun. It wasn't for me, but it's I assume like a Friday the 13th camp would be the same, which is that it's like during the day there's activities, which it would be like some sort of role playing, I assume, and the real main event is that at night everybody gets shit faced. That is the adult summer camp. Right. Adult summer camp is
to get drunk in the woods.
It's college simulator.
Yeah,
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
great food. There was great food.
I bet it was, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like that wrinkle, it's in this particular episode says a lot more about the person hiring Sean and Gus than Sean and Gus themselves.
Yeah, no, again, going into this, I had no impression that Sean and Gus weren't like responsible or like were loose cannons. They were actually the most responsible people in the whole episode.
To the degree like where like later when the old guy washes up dead in the lake, and the cop has to keep him on the porch, and she's like, I can't justify moving him any further than that, you know, obviously because it's a crime scene, but everybody needs to stay out of there. And he convinces her, he's like, well, let me look at the body,
right,
to try to figure out what happened. So it's like he's like uncharacteristically responsible in this episode.
He is. Like I said, he's very responsible. He's a little inconsistent only because he runs away from danger early on, and then he runs out into danger later. And like they do a whole bit where he's like hiding in a closet and stuff.
Yeah, that's
so I
like
didn't understand why he suddenly decided to be brave at the end.
I guess it was just one of those things
again,
where
I
it was
don't really
like
know this character, so I don't know people can be brave in certain situations, or at least they've done characters like that where when there's like something that intrigues them, they forget their fears, etc. But I just didn't get any of that from this.
Yeah, no, I think it was just more of a, well, nobody else is going to do it, so I guess I have to,
right,
type of situation.
When it comes to the second mystery, they did sort of show their hand there because they have a scene where they all play strip poker. The only person who isn't there is Foggy. And the person being murdered.
Yes.
And so it was like, oh, well.
Yep. Sometimes that's the only way you to solve a mystery movie is you just have to, okay, who's here? Who's in the scene?
Are these episodes going to be... I imagine this is more like, again, House, where it's like you can't really solve what medical mystery House is
You can't
figuring out
always
because you just don't have the information.
you can't always make the specific in the episodes I've seen. You can't always make the specific connections that Sean does, but you in all the episodes I've seen, you can recognize enough of the connections to figure out who did it and why.
Right. What
It's
are the connections he made in this one?
Just the scratches on people's necks, and this one kind of had to really move quickly on it because like the first 2/3 of the episode are devoted to a fake mystery.
Right.
So it was really just like he noticed scratches on the dead bodies that matched up with Foggy's ring. And because he was literally the only person not in the cabin, he goes into the next room to play Nintendo, and they walk into the room to check on him, and it's Robert the doll sitting there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the general the gist I'm getting is this episode does not represent this series.
From what I've seen, this is a wild one to dive into the show on.
I don't know. I'm wondering if any of the other ones we'll watch represent the series.
I don't know.
I'm just gonna have to judge it based on what I see.
Exactly.
Like
that's all you can do, man.
That's all I can do.
That is all you can do. The very last thing I want to talk about is his dad's lesson, because from what I've seen, that usually ties into the episode somehow. And in this episode, it's like particularly funny because his dad's lessons, from what I've seen, are usually kind of shitty.
Right.
But in this one, it's like he comes to pick Sean and Gus up from camp when they're kids, and Sean's mad because Gus ditched him to build a piñata with Jason instead and wound up winning. And his lesson is to basically be like, you shouldn't be mad at Gus. Sometimes you just work with other friends. It's perfectly normal. But like the entire episode happens because Gus teams back up with this nerd Jason and decides to play a prank on him. So it's like the lesson was like the opposite was true. Like he should be upset when Gus hangs out with Jason because people get murdered when that happens.
Right. It only brings sadness.
Yeah, it brought nothing but misery to these people.
Yeah. Some lives collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A business was shuttered. Because I really don't think he's going to open the camp after this.
Right. And we all know, like, businesses are the most important thing. Like, if a few lives get lost, that's how businesses work.
But what about my business? Oh man, I don't have anything else to talk about for this particular episode.
Neither do I.
Yeah. I hope this was something.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah. This is a
look. You're gonna get 3 more of these.
Yeah.
So
I was just gonna say this is one of the more unique requests we've got because it's really just we're getting dropped right in behind enemy lines with not a lot of context.
Yeah. Not a lot of context at all.
Yeah, it's like the extent of my experience with the show. I knew the premise of the show, but that was it.
Right. I think if you're a fan of Psych, I don't know if this will do anything for you.
I don't know.
If you're like playing with yourself or whatever while listening to us, or like I don't know what do these perverts do?
I don't know, man. I don't know what you do with your lives.
Yeah, whatever you're doing right now, you weird Psych fans. I don't know if this does it for you. I don't know if you haven't seen Psych, what you're gonna get out of this. You weird non-Psych perverts. You know, I don't know.
And quite frankly,
enjoyed it.
I don't want to know.
Yeah, no, don't tell us.
Don't tell
Jesus.
me. God, don't tell me. No.
Absolutely don't tell us.
You keep that buttoned up inside.
That stays in your heart.
That's just for you.
All right, well, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Hey, Noah, thank you so much. Patron producer Noah, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah, and you know what? I had a fun time doing it. I had a fun time watching it. I'm glad I'm checking out Psych.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, thank you. This was again through our Patreon, and if you're interested, you can go to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed, There's exclusive podcasts on there, like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman and Fox Mulder is a Maniac. There's a tier where you can produce your very own podcast, like this one.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch movies with us every Friday night. That's another tier. There's a lot of options on there, so you should check it out.
Yeah. We also have a store, tpublic.com/store/GameFitEmployed, where you can get t-shirts, masks, mugs, stickers, posters, all kinds of things. So check that out while
Please.
you're at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can go in there and get a tier to commission your own podcast and have us watch, I don't know, just drop us in on like season 4 of The Sopranos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Try to piece that shit together.
Well, I mean, I've seen it, but...
I haven't. I've seen the first season and that's it.
Really?
I watched the first season when it came on, and then it did that shit where it was like 4 years later, here's season 2. I was like, nah, no.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can go back. You can wrap that up. You can wrap that up now, though.
I know, yeah.
It's, they got all of those out. You know that.
Yeah.
Pretty sure they're done with it. Oh, wait, they're not. They're making a prequel.
No, they are making a prequel, yeah.
Why are you doing that?
I don't know.
Do that.
I don't know.
It's so
Why would
silly.
you do that? Why would you do that?